table. This was my table user data.
Mm.
Let me just wait. Select it. So this is my table right now. Now I want to create that user phone book table. So as I told you in the task, it will have like different columns. Let me just, yeah, it will have this record ID, auto incrementing, user ID, contact ID, and different columns, right? The thing is to look here is there's no point adding a user ID or a contact ID if it is not in the user table, right? If I have no user inside my user table, then how will why should I create that, in a different user phone book table? If the user is not here, there's no point creating a user ID 4 inside the table, right? So if I just create a table, then without foreign key, then there's no way to stop that. Because I can just create table user phone book, and inside this I'm gonna create record ID, which is int primary
Primary
key, and I want
identity
it to be auto
1 by
incrementing to 1 comma 1,
1.
and then I'm gonna create user ID.
User ID is
Again
the
int.
foreign key.
Yeah,
Foreign
so
key, no?
let's not do the foreign key right now. I'll show you the problem without foreign key. User ID, and then there's contact ID.
Contact ID.
And then we have other columns like created on that we
Created
had. So
on
it will be date time.
date time.
Here I'm
Get
providing you,
date. Get
yeah,
date.
get date.
Comma. Modified
Then we
on
modified on.
date
These are the
time.
column which you should be like when you create your update proc, right? You should be updating the modified on. Try that as a practice, because when
Okay.
I'm updating
So
a record,
all the table, these two field will be there usually. All the tables.
yeah, because we need to have some kind of way to figure out whether when the record was created, when the records are modified. It's a
Yeah,
right
yeah.
to have.
It's a
If you don't
standard,
have
coding
that,
standard.
yeah, it's a standard. If you don't have it, then it'll be very difficult for you to realize when the record was updated or not updated. So it's a like a very nice idea to have these kinds of column. Because see how the world works is I will eventually somehow this data will become old. So I
Yeah.
would want to archive them later on. So when I'm
Mm.
doing those archiving thing, these columns are really important. Otherwise, I won't be able to decide which record is early, which record is old. So those are like if you think about triggers, if you know about triggers. So whenever record is updated, it will have a different entry somewhere in other table, and that will be archive record. So all those records, will have like all the possible snapshots. So all
Yeah.
these column will be then helpful to figure out which is how the rail was updated, like to get the whole history of user. Then all these column become important. So if I just
Yeah.
create this table, there's like a very big problem right now, because if I do an insert into user phone book with just user ID I want and contact ID, because other columns are default, so they'll be auto populated. And if I like 4 comma 4, you see it will insert that. But the problem is with this insertion is there is no user ID with 4 4. So I insert that, but if you look at the table, the other user data table, there is no 4 user ID. There is no 4 ID. So this is possible now because I'm not putting any constraint. But
Right.
I just want all those only those users that are actually being inside the user table, right? I don't want any connection which is not actually there. So in order to do that, first I'll do a drop. Just recreate this table. Rather than doing an alter, drop is like much easy because data is blank right now. If I have like a very precious data, then I have to do alter. And
Alter.
that
Yeah.
becomes,
Yeah.
yeah, that becomes complicated because if you're changing a type or something, and then it will create like show you different kind of errors. It's possible. So let's just create this a foreign key.
Foreign key.
When I'm defining foreign key, I have to define which is the like where should I go connect,
Yeah.
because I have to
Reference.
define the reference has to be given. So I'm saying user data
User
and then user ID.
ID.
Yeah, it should be like this. Let me just. Oh, so there's a one more key references.
The reference keyword.
So references. This ID. So see, the error gives you an indication something you're doing something. And again, contact ID is also, I want something which is available. Like it shouldn't be a random contact ID. So I'll again
Mm.
create a reference with user ID. Right. Now, if I
Mm.
create this table, you'll see
Then
that,
two foreign key will be that is okay,
yeah, that is
correct?
fine. That is
Mm.
fine. I'm just
Mm.
trying, I'm
Mm.
just writing a constraint that this ID and this ID, this column can't have
Mm.
any record which is not in the user ID, that user
Mm.
data table.
It's a
There's no
jet
point
data,
in a
yeah.
contact ID, right? That is also a user
Mm.
ID. So
Mm.
now
Mm.
if I do this insertion, it should show me an error.
Ah, ah.
It's saying
Mm.
that
Yeah, yeah.
whatever you're trying to insert right now is actually not
Mm.
available in the user ID.
Mm.
This is a wrong insertion statement.
Mm.
I can only insert something which is available in user tape data now.
Mm.
So that's like a very strong constraint.
Mm.
So you see 1, 2, 3. I can only insert one with some contact 2, 3. So I can say the Alice should have like Bob and Alice should have like Michael as its contact book, and this should work. You get what I'm saying?
Okay, yeah, yeah. Mm.
Because it's available now, so it's allowing
Mm.
me to insert. Otherwise, that's the thing. That's the how foreign
Mm.
key works. Because I'm just
Mm.
putting a strong constraint that you should enter
Mm.
anything. You should only
Mm.
enter those users that are actually inside the user table.
Mm.
So that's like the
Yeah.
idea of foreign key.
Mm.
So this
Mm.
is something I want to show you. That's why in this table, I didn't mention it anywhere in your task to create a
Mm.
foreign key.
Mm.
But if you have done that, it won't show you any error, but logically it will it'll go wrong somewhere.
Mm. Mm.
Because
Good. Yeah.
otherwise you might insert those records which are not actually there. Now you see the
Mm.
power of this foreign key is if I try to drop this user phone book, like I want to drop this
Mm.
user data, it won't allow me to do that. So if I want to drop my main table, it will say that
Mm.
I
Mm.
can't allow you to do this
Mm.
because you are referring this table as a foreign key in some other table.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Mm.
so that's like another advantage that you get, that all the tables
Mm.
like your master table can never be dropped directly.
Mm.
And even if I want to
Mm.
delete this record, 1 and 2 from the table, it won't even allow that
Mm.
because your deletion has to happen from the child table. You
Mm.
can't directly delete
Okay.
a master table row and then your connection will be broken. So
Mm.
first you need to
Mm.
delete this record, which
Mm.
is using those 1, 2, 3, and then you can only delete the master table
Mm.
record.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Mm.
that's like the approach of foreign key.
Mm.
So now I'm not creating stored procedure or anything. I'm just creating a
Mm.
table. So you can insert
Mm.
records and you can create
Mm.
proc to get the select statement.
Yeah.
They'll help
Mm.
you to complete this task. Now the
Yeah.
last is I just want to show you how to get that inner join. So
Mm.
I will again not want create that, create procedure,
Mm.
but
Mm.
I'll show you this inner join statements and explain the
Yeah.
concept of join.
Mm.
So it- join is basically just to select records. It's not
Mm.
for you can use it for updations and all, but mostly
Mm.
it's used to, join two tables and get the data out together. Now, if you see
Yeah.
the phone book record, there's a problem here that I'm not getting username.
Mm.
I'm only getting, just the contact IDs. But
Mm.
later on, when I want to publish that phone book, I would want a contact name somewhere, right?
Mm. Mm.
So then let's select username from user data. I'll start with that,
Mm.
my main table.
Mm.
So this is the
Mm.
username that I want to select. So this is something that I want to select, but this time I want to get only those records that are inside, like the user contact of Alice, because Alice is my user ID one. I
Mm.
just want to get the different phone books, like the contacts of Alice. So I'll say this table A, then I'll do
Even-
inner
Yeah.
join
Inner join.
with
Yes.
user
One.
phone book B on
Mm.
A dot
Dot user ID
ID
equal to b
B
dot use
user ID.
use. Mm.
Now it's gonna join these records and it's gonna
Mm.
take that contact ID out,
Yes.
right?
Mm.
So where
Mm.
I just want the user ID
Mm.
to be, I just want the record of Alice. So which user
Okay.
ID should I
Mm.
block? Should I, target? So this should be B,
Mm.
right? If I run
Mm.
this,
Mm.
so now see the problem
Mm. Mm.
because I have joined the user IDs. So it's giving me Alice errors, but that's not what I want. I want the records, the contact of Alice.
Mm.
So
Mm.
rather than joining a user ID, I should be joining contact IDs,
Okay. Mm.
right? Because that's what I want.
Mm.
I want to
Yeah, yeah.
join with
Mm.
contact ID
Contact.
and select that.
Mm.
Now I'm getting Bob Michael.
Boban.
So
Mm.
given a user ID, given Alice,
Mm.
I can get the contacts
Mm.
of, the contact book.
Mm.
This is what this
Yeah.
task was about. That you need to
Mm.
create the inner join so that I can able to get for a given user ID. On user ID, I send one, and then I
Mm.
get all the different contacts of Alice.
Mm.
Now the difference between this inner join, so this was like basically selecting all the all the common records, so all the users that are there inside this, I'm gonna get that.
Mm.
But
Mm.
right now I can show you outer join also, but let's do that in like a different example or in a different application.
Mm.
Because right
Mm.
now if I show you outer join, I have to create some null records, and you'll
Mm.
be like it'll be confusing to you because it won't really,
Mm.
it's not
Mm.
helpful for this application. You can think from that
Mm.
direction.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want
Mm.
to connect records that are actually there. I don't really care about records which are not available.
Mm. Mm.
So inner join is a perfect thing for me
Yeah.
because only I want
Mm.
those records that are actually with the contacts.
Yeah.
And I'm initiating a very strong foreign key constraint, so I won't have any record which is not there in the user data.
Mm.
So anyhow, my outer joins won't really matter here much. I won't be able to push those records without, because I don't have
Mm.
any other column with those null and thing.
Mm.
So I'll show you outer join with like in a different application, maybe in the phone book or library management or something. But like
Mm.
this is the idea of how joins will work.
Yeah. Mm.
If you have
Yeah, got
multiple
it. Yeah.
tables, then you should have some kind of connection between this table. If there's no connection, then the join really will give you a weird statements.
Mm.
Like I'm pretty sure that my IDM is ID is on a match, but if I'm randomly
Mm.
connecting a different column or different cable, like username or something, then it will randomly match something and won't match anything. It can happen, and
Mm.
like anything can happen in that scenario.
Mm.
So for joins, we generally use primary keys
Mm.
because primary keys
Yeah.
are identifying those columns uniquely. And if
Mm.
I'm joining them, then I'm pretty sure that my record that's gonna come finally will be one. Otherwise, if you see, if I use a very different kind of combination, it will give me redundant records. And this is a very
Okay.
common scenario in inner joins. If you're not using a right key
Mm.
combination, you will
Mm.
get like a redundant kind of thing.
Mm.
So
Mm.
generally inner join is generally used with primary keys, but there are certain scenarios where you want to join some data,
Mm.
and because you don't care about redundant records, then you can do that. But
Mm.
generally for getting a right with the way the whole system works, so generally we use inner join with primary keys.
Yeah. Mm.
So this was your like fourth task,
Mm. Mm.
and
Yeah.
again now the last part of C sharp connection and C sharp connection through procedure, you can do that now. So
Mm.
I won't show
Yeah, I
you that,
can.
but
Mm.
that'll be
Mm.
helpful for you to figure that out. And
Mm.
whatever procedure that you will create here, we
Mm.
will be using in the UI side that I'll show you right now.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, now let's start with the MVC part.
Mm.
And now what I'm going to do is I will be porting your this whole console application that I'm showing you right now to a UI
Mm.
side.
Mm.
So that's where the the MVC part comes into picture.
Yeah.
Before doing that, so like yeah, so before doing that, I will be explaining you a concept of class libraries.
Mm.
Because see, whatever Dell layer that you have created DB manager, that's very helpful.
Mm.
I should be somehow, I should somehow use that in different projects. I don't want to recreate that, execute query, execute procedure, and all those functions everywhere when I create a start a new project.
Mm.
I should somehow make it modular enough that I can just get that out, plug it, and use it instantly.
Yeah. Mm.
So in order to do that, I'm going to use this concept of class libraries. So
Mm.
what we'll do
The
is,
last project DB manager was our class library, no?
yeah, so
DB.
this is a very nice class. It has no
Mm.
dependencies anywhere. It uses
Mm.
basic, system data components, and it's very generic.
Mm.
So this is a perfect thing to convert into class library because it's a kind of DAL layer, a data access layer.
Mm.
That's DAL is, and it's perfect data access layer. It can be used connected with the SQL server and can be used later on easily.
Mm.
So let's start with creating this. I'm going to use the same class, but I'm just creating a new project now.
Mm.
And you can have multiple projects inside a solution.
Mm.
There's not an issue. Solution is a collection of all the projects. So you can have
Okay. Yeah.
UI, C sharp, and anything. It's a collection of whole thing.
Mm. Mm.
I'm going to create right now. I'm going to create this add new project. And this time I'm going to choose C# class library as my template. So there's a multiple templates. If you should I've pinned that, so it's coming right now on top of me. But for you, you might have to search it. So just search for class library, and it's going to give you multiple projects. So there are different ways by which you can create class library. We can create a Razor class library, .NET framework. So we shouldn't be targeting right now Android, iOS thing, because we are not using .NET Core kind of standard. We want just a C# .NET framework DLL library C# Windows. Just
Yeah,
want to create a
yeah.
C# .NET framework library. So that's something
Correct,
that I'm
yeah.
going to use. I'm going to press next, and I'll say it to be a nice name, like a proper name. So I'll say that data access layer. No dependency on projects, nothing, because it's very modular. It doesn't care about whether I'm working on phone book or library management. It's a very modular project which can be used anywhere
Okay.
in all the projects. So I just want to put it a very generic name, and I create that. Now you see, this DAL layer doesn't really even care about SQL Server. It's a DAL layer. It can go to MySQL, it can go to other databases around the world. So that's how particularly you will get a default class one. So I won't be using that. So I'll just, I'll rename it, because I'm going to create a SQL DB manager. So I'll just rename it to SQL DAL manager,
Okay.
because this specifically will work on SQL Server side. On MySQL, I'll be creating a new manager. So it's as soon as you rename it, so Visual Studio knows that the class name has to also be renamed. So you can do that. Then the class will also be renamed for you. Now again, because I
Okay.
want to have a very nice skeleton, I don't want to write anything, without just writing out there. I want to have a very nice standard. So I will be creating the same interface again, IDAL. I'm going to copy the same thing because we have already written. This time I've made that IDAL because we are working on DAL there. And these functions are like good enough.
Okay. Yeah.
As a start, it's good enough. And I don't want to make this interface public. I can do that. If I do that, then whenever I'm accessing this DAL, I can access the interface also. So let's just do that, because I want to give it publicly outside to the world later on. I just don't want to use it inside my namespace. So I'm going to use this system data. This is control dot. You already know that now,
Yeah, yeah.
because I want to use using. So that's done. Now in SQL DAL Manager, I'm going to just use this interface,
I
and I'm going to
ideal
control dot so that I can implement it with all the
implement.
functions. And I'm still going to do the same thing, SQL DAL, because I want a constructor with some
Construct.
dbcon key. See, this constructor will only be initialized if I have a connection key. So it's because I don't want it to be initialized any other way. I won't be creating that blank constructor that you have created that time. If I do that, then there's a chance of error now. I would be able to create a constructor without any key, but that's not what I want. I don't want any user to create a constructor of this class without any key. So I won't be using that. So if you have like moved that thing in your project, then you will be getting error every time you try to create an object with a blank. This is like a strong constraint that I want to create this. And that blank constructor is automatically available to all the classes by default.
Okay.
Even if you don't write it, it will be there for you to for your initialization. But here I'm doing a constructor overriding kind of thing. I'm overriding that constructor with a new key, and I'm making it like a solid thing that you should have a key. Otherwise, I won't initialize your class. Now I'm gonna just copy that TP manager. It's written like in a very nice thing. So I'll just copy this whole thing. I think you got this whole thing, right? Why this
Yeah.
functions, how that function works.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm gonna just copy that. This is available for you for your reference in that Git thing. You can
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
that, or you can just try writing it out. Because if you write it out once, then you'll know what you're writing and how the things are working.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Otherwise, it's when you're listening, we know. Oh, this is I know. No. But when you're
yeah, yeah,
doing,
yeah.
you know.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
when you write that thing out, then only you'll try to understand. You'll try to see how things are working from here and there. And exceptions are a very nice way to figure out what the problem is. Exception says really well in the first line. You can see what the exception wants you to say.
Yeah. System.configuration.
Yeah, so that I've already edited that. So now this whole class is ready. All the constructors are done. I'll also show you this, that why constructor is helpful. Now imagine I want, because this is like a public DAL layer, right? It's very generic. I'll just
Yeah.
add a new class now, and I'll say it MySQL DAL manager, and I'm gonna initialize this with IDAL again, and we will be coming back to this, construction
Mm.
soon when we will be working with MySQL. Right now, I'm just going to
Mm.
implement it with like these exceptions.
Mm.
Somebody tries to call it, it's going to break apart. But we will be coming back when we do this part, and we will be filling
Mm.
this, and then you'll realize the importance of having like a constructor or something. So right now, I won't be implementing MySQL, but we will be doing that later on.
Mm.
So my DAL is ready, and if you don't define your classes to be public, then the whole thing of modularity breaks apart. I won't be
Mm.
able to use this class as a
Mm.
create an object of this class if I don't define it public.
Mm. Right. Right.
There's no
Yeah.
point creating such a class which
Mm.
cannot be accessed
Mm.
from outside.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
the public is important, and these
Mm.
functions should also be public. I can make them static, but I don't want to
Mm.
make them static because I want to have this constructor thing happening. If I
Mm.
make them static, these functions, then somebody from outside can directly call this execute query, and
Mm.
the connection won't be initialized then, and then this command line will break.
Okay. Mm.
I want to have
Mm.
this line initialized when somebody
Mm.
gets an object. So constructor gives you a very tight
Mm.
constraint that if you want to create my object, you need to initialize my constructor and you need to pass connection key, which is very important. Without providing connection key,
Mm.
there's no point of having a DAL layer. Where
Mm.
will it go and talk to, and which server will it talk to? It doesn't know that.
Mm.
So that's why this constructor becomes really important then.
Okay. Mm.
Now, in the properties, if you go to this assembly info, so this basically helps you to change some things about your DLL. That description, configuration, company name, trademark, culture. It's more on the side of publishing and your
Mm.
assembly version. So whenever you are updating your code, maybe you want to change your version number. So all things can be done using this assembly info class. But we just right now creating a first assembly, so we won't be doing that. But think from a production side, if you're working in an industry or something, then
Mm.
you might want to maintain this versioning.
Okay.
Every time
Mm.
you update a code, as you see, every deal has some kind of version. Like if you
Mm.
go to this reference, this system configuration will have like a different version.
Mm. Okay.
So because that version helps you to understand that this is a new DLL or that's the old DLL.
Mm.
Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to layerize because the name will be same. How will you know that
Yeah.
DLL is new or old? So this
Mm.
versioning helps you in that direction.
Okay. Yeah.
So if I just rebuild this, it won't break anything. It won't break if your code is compiling well. It won't tell you any logical errors
Mm.
because this is not running. There's no public static void main here. If you can see, it
Mm.
is just collection of classes, nothing else. Just it's a
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
it's a kind of box which I'm going to play around and I'm actually
Mm.
executing. Right now
Mm.
it's nothing. It's going to work perfectly. If there's no compilation error, it's going to just compile and it's going to give that thing back to me.
Mm. Yeah.
So now we have a DAL access layer ready.
Mm.
Now we will be using this a lot in next projects. And right now
Mm.
we'll move to MVC concepts, and then
Mm.
we will connect this library with the MVC.
Mm. Okay.
So now I'll port this phone book application to UI. Before doing that, I'll yeah. So before doing that, just I'm gonna create this project MVC, and then I'll
Mm.
explain to you all the different components of how MVC work. So
Yeah.
again, in the same solution, I can create a new project.
Mm.
And because I'm using Visual Studio, so everything will be pre-filled for me. I don't really
Mm.
worry about what folder to use, what kind of configuration to use. So if I just, write ASP.NET MVC, so it's going to give you some template. And don't
Mm.
go with this thing. This is console app yet, right? I don't want to create a console app. I want to create
Mm.
a web application. Now there are multiple things here.
Mm.
So we want to create a web application which is on .NET framework and which is on C Sharp. I don't want to use
Mm.
Visual Basic. This is
Mm.
something that I'm targeting. And
Yeah.
I don't want to create a ASP.NET Core application. That's a different thing altogether. That's why I
Mm.
always say that core ASP.NET Core and .NET
Mm.
MVC, like web applications, they're totally different frameworks.
Mm.
Same
Mm.
thing that's running here won't directly run on core. So that's a
Mm.
different project altogether. So we want to
Yeah.
work on this one. So we'll do this. Select,
Mm.
and I'm say that phone book UI app.
Mm.
And when I do
So,
create now, see right now it's not even asking about whether you want MVC or something,
can I
right?
ask you one? Now, this is a different project in the same solution, correct?
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
So,
exactly.
so if you want to fetch anything from the previous project, you can be do here.
Yeah,
Any
yeah.
information? Okay, but it won't affect the each other also, correct?
No, no,
I
no.
mean,
It's they are all whole new projects, and it won't affect any other project. The good part
project.
of this is all the phone book thing is together in one place. It's like a folder.
Yeah,
All the
yeah,
folder will have every project together, and you can run individually those projects. So I'll show you this. I'm going to
individually
run
can
this.
run.
I'm going to run
Ah,
this UI, and it won't be running console then. When you press F5,
mm,
then I will be running this UI app only. I'll show you that
okay, yeah.
how it's going to work.
Mm,
So when I create
mm,
it, s- now this thing new pop-up comes into picture.
mm,
And you'll see there are multiple ways to create .NET application. There's an empty thing, totally blank. You add
mm,
everything from scratch. Nobody really uses that unless you want to really, take control of everything.
mm,
So we won't be going with empty. Web forms is something which was previously used before MVC. Extremely. If
mm,
you remember the .aspx pages.
yeah.
So those were the pages which are basically based on web forms, and it's
Mm,
now like used, but it's very old now. It's deprecated, almost deprecated. Nobody
mm,
really creates a ASPX page anymore. They either go with
mm,
MVC architecture because ASPX web forms has a very bad routing scheme. The
MT
routing is
people using nowadays?
no
MT?
empty.
Mm.
What's empty?
MT, the first one. The first one is from the
Yeah, yeah,
scratch.
the empty. You can see if you want to take
Mm.
control of your whole application, so
MT
you
will,
can
okay,
start
yeah.
with empty project. But then see
Mm,
for us, for even for people who are starting from scratch, they really don't want to create each and every folder, right? They
mm,
want at least blank folders created for you. So
got
it's
it.
basically for something which you want to start 100% from scratch. So that's like the
Mm,
empty thing. And web forms is old driven UI. It like MVC runs on kind of on top of web form, but it's not it's like web form doesn't have a very good routing scheme, which is
mm,
why the people are not preferring web forms nowadays. As you can see, the routing of MVC is really nice. I can just
mm,
write everything on URL and I know exactly which function is going to hit.
mm,
So it's like a very nice standard now. So what we will
yeah.
looking in this entire course, we'll be going with MVC, then we'll
Mm,
go to web API, then we'll go to
mm,
single page application.
mm,
These things are really important. And
mm.
the real power use of JavaScript HTML is in the single page application. You see the HTML,
Okay.
CSS3 and JavaScript. That's
Yeah.
where the single page application doesn't really have much of the control towards MVC. So
Mm,
it's like different from MVC and gives you more
mm,
control from the JavaScript side. And MVC gives
mm-hmm.
you more control from the C
Is
sharp
that
side.
means it's more on front end side, something
Yeah, so
like that, or
single page application is more on front end side.
uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So if you are using web API, this web API part, then
Mm-hmm.
it's more helpful if you're using the JavaScript, React, Angular, these kind of frameworks.
Mm-hmm. So
They all
if the job showing that, do you know the single page application means they prefer something person in React, and do you think?
so single page application you should know because you need to still write C sharp components. You still need to
Mm.
write those web APIs, right? But you should
Okay.
you should
Uh-huh.
you should know that those web APIs are not interacting anyway with the HTML now in single page application. We will be using a JavaScript framework to interact with
Mm.
those APIs. But if you look at the
Mm.
MVC, you'll see I'm right now I'll create different bindings. Those
Mm.
those C sharp code will be interacting with the HTML side. So
Mm.
that's like a tight
Mm.
binding with HTML and MVC, but it becomes very loose in single page application. So
Mm.
so because we are starting using a scripting language, here we are not using a scripting language directly.
Mm.
It's indirectly being used on behalf of us. Here we're using it directly. So that's why our application, as you can see, we'll start with
Mm.
MVC. We'll go with this frameworks very really important. Then we'll go
Mm.
to this student admission UI, which is more on the MySQL side, and then we'll go to Web API. And the last application that will show e-commerce, it's entirely on single page application.
Mm. Mm.
This is
Okay.
the
Yeah.
three things that we will be targeting in this
Mm.
ASP.NET. See, single page
Mm.
application will be running on top of ASP.NET only.
Mm.
But
Mm.
the
Yeah.
control, it won't be a MVC driven application. It'll be
Mm.
more on the JavaScript side.
Mm.
That's why it's single page because there's only one page and every time is running. We are running on a single URL. Everything we're doing is on a
Mm.
single URL. But in MVC, we'll
Mm.
be doing everything on different pages.
Yeah.
So I'll show you
Okay,
that. So
fine. Yeah.
we'll start with MVC,
Mm.
and so these are the advanced features. So see, unit test projects, Docker support, HTTPS. So we like it's not important to really know everything here, but maybe after this project, all after like I've shown you everything, then I can like go quickly with these things, because
Mm.
Docker is altogether a whole new zone, and unit testing is like again on a different level. It's like a whole
Mm.
new session altogether, unit testing.
Mm.
So we just focus on that. Again, we don't want any kind of authentication. That's also an advanced topic. So we
Mm.
just want a very basic application, no authentication scheme.
Mm.
So we'll do that
Mm.
and just create. And the good thing is, because I'm using a template, I'm not getting
Mm.
empty. So
Mm.
something will be up for me.
Mm. Yeah.
I will have an application with all the components provided, all the deals provided.
Yeah. It's
I can,
like a controller view model, correct?
yeah. Model
Yeah.
view controller, that's MVC. So I'll show
Yes.
you
Yes.
those three things, and those are very important on how the MVC
Mm.
works. So it's like a whole a proper stack.
Mm. Mm. Parallel, I want to ask you. See,
Yeah.
sometime when you're opening this computer, there I think that my because of the Visual Studio, there are lots of backend program is running, correct?
Yeah.
So how I can be do that? Keep my laptop efficient way, because if I open the screen, to take lots of time for coming the screen to
Yeah.
open.
So, I mean,
In that case,
the problem with Visual Studio and the whole .NET thing is, you'll
mm,
see that when you work on single page application, that project
mm,
will open very fast.
okay. Mm-hmm.
You'll see that, because the more dependency I have on ASP.NET libraries, you see this taking so much time, because right now
Yes, yes,
adding
yeah.
those
Mm,
those DLLs to my projects, downloading those DLLs to my project. So
yes,
it
yeah.
takes a lot of time because I have to create this whole component. But if you use a single page application, then it's more on a JavaScript side, less on .NET.
Ah.
So you see,
Mm.
if I
Oh,
open references, you see there's so many deals now.
mm. Got
It
it.
will
Yeah.
create those connection and create that project. Take time on that, and even the building will become as soon as this project starts growing, it starts
Mm.
adding more components, more deals, more deals. So it's gonna be a little bit slower in building. But if you think from the production side, if I put this thing on a client, once I deploy it on their server,
Mm.
it's gonna run very fast.
Oh, okay.
It
Only when you
creating it,
uh
developing it, it will be slow for you. So generally,
okay.
if you're working in a very big project, you will have a very
Mm-hmm.
strong machine.
Uh-huh.
You'll have like a
Mm-hmm.
1632 GB machine with a very strong CPU, so that you'll be able to develop that.
Mm-hmm.
We will still be like we will be able to work on this project, because we are very doing a very simple component thing. But if you're on an
Mm.
industry side, they will provide you their own system, and that will have a very
Mm-hmm.
high configuration.
So what that means, so it once it's implemented, it will be do faster. It won't be delay like this way,
Yeah.
correct?
Once
Mm.
I create a DLL, like now I've created a DLL, right? If I give you
Mm.
this DLL, it's already pre-packed with all the code. It'll
Mm.
just plug and start running. So
So I have one more doubt. If in that case, how I can keep my system efficient? Do you have any idea? Like
also
some, yeah.
so efficient in the way that you can have like as little application as you can, one, and second, try to use like as much tabs of Chrome, because if you're using Chrome takes a lot of memory.
Oh, okay. So
So
in
if
that
you look,
case,
try to keep your system as light as possible. Don't open too much things. Don't open
ah,
Word document parallelly with Visual Studio. Try to use only Visual Studio with
ah,
your parallel application. It'll
okay.
take memory. It'll like take your whole system down, because it's how it works, because it's very heavy. Visual Studio is by
Mm,
default very heavy. It has so many things, working parallelly.
mm.
But because we are doing development right now, we really can't buy a
So
whole new
one thing, one thing is don't open too many Chrome pages. What is the second thing you mentioned?
try to have like as little applications as possible. So you see right now I'm
Ah,
using Skype and Word and Sublime.
ah,
All these
yeah,
things
yeah,
also take memory, right? And
yeah,
have
yeah.
have as much less thing in the background as possible. So right now I'm running
Mm,
multiple things. This is also taking a
mm,
RAM.
mm.
So
Yeah.
try to
But
have
once you closed it, it will be everything will be closed, correct? It's not
yeah.
running in the
No.
mm,
Once you close Visual Studio, everything will be closed.
closed.
Was Visual Studio, the first time you open Visual Studio is going to take time, but then it'll be
Mm.
fine. Once you run it, at least
Yeah.
once you debug your application one time, then it's going to run faster.
Because when I do it now, I can see today when I just opened the system, it was taking quite a lots of time to, to
Yeah.
so I was
It will.
surprised, even though it's a small application, why it's become
Yeah,
hang like that?
because it takes a lot of space and memory. It takes like Visual Studio is really. It crunches everything down. Even right now for me, I'm overshooting like a 6 GB RAM memory. So like you see 7 GB, I'm using 7 GB right now. So even though my CPU is free, but my memory is like really used because it's very heavy. This whole application is very heavy.
Okay.
So try to use as much as like try to free as much memory as you can by closing those applications. You see everything runs like this. So many things are running. So try to release as much memory as you can so that Visual Studio can run pretty fast.
Okay.
Cool. So once I create this UI app, I will have this, and you see it's on bold right now. So whichever application is in bold in your solution, if you press F5, it's going to run that application. So if I want to run console application, I'll just put right click, set a startup project. So now press, you see start now changes to that application. Now if I want to run UI, as right click, I just set a startup project. You see now it's changed to as Google Chrome. Now before going to this whole thing, let's just run this application and see how it looks. That's the thing of having a multiple project. So if I just select the right project, if I run this, it's going to run that whole application.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's easier that way. Other than creating a whole like new Visual Studio every time, I can just create a new
Right.
solution and add multiple projects inside it.
Mm.
So the first run will be a little slow, but it's going to open a Google Chrome for you,
Mm.
and you will see a pre-filled UI. You'll see something running on the UI in your first run.
Yeah.
So it's running, and the first run will be slow. Like first run is for any application of .NET. First run is like they'll collect everything and run everything. So it'll be slow in the first run. But we'll have a Chrome, and now see we are on a UI side. We are not on a console application. We are using Google Chrome right now, and we are having our own IIS Express. So every time I run this application, a new server will be up, which is called IIS. All the applications of .NET is hosted on IIS. It's the way it's by which way the applications are hosted. And when I run this application, a small server is like turned on for me, and this application will be hosted on my server. So if I click right click, you'll see my PhoneBook UI app here.
One more thing,
Yeah.
when I just have a doubt, SQL when you're doing SS Studio Management,
Yeah.
the data will be storing all that in Studio Management, and the SQL Express using only for the server purpose, correct?
Yeah. So SSMS is a way to access that server, which is already installed in your machine. So SSMS
Okay,
is
that means
just a
the
tool.
data will be always in the Studio Management, correct?
No,
SQL
data
Studio.
will always be in the SQL server. Management Studio is just a tool to access that data.
Oh, okay.
It's like
It's a
Visual
tool.
Studio.
Okay.
You can even close this, do everything what you want, but it's data where you're storing all these records. This is inside SQL Server.
So it's there's to run the SQL server, SS Studio is compulsory one, correct?
So this is a way to access that easily because it provides you lots of features, the database diagrams, tables, and everything, right? You can access, it will be difficult to access SQL Server directly. So people previously used to use command line interfaces, like they used to write command on console. But it gives you a user interface to access that server, which is really nice. Otherwise, it'll be very difficult for me to see those tables. This is a way to get that interface. SQL Server
Yeah,
is
yeah.
the bare bone. It doesn't really have any kind of UI. Like C#
Okay.
framework, C#.NET doesn't have any UI. We use Visual
Mm.
Studio to create those applications. So
So
that's
it's like a tool. SS
it's a
Studio is
tool.
like a
Yeah, it's definitely a
tool.
tool. It's a tool.
Mm.
Similarly for
Okay.
MySQL, we will be using MySQL Workbench. It's a tool
Ah.
like SSMS. But
Mm.
the underlying database that's running, that's MySQL.
Okay.
So when I run this application, you see something is pre-filled for me. I have a home, I have about, contact, application name. So this is the thing of MVC that it provides you with some, that template provides you with something to work upon. Now you can start building your own thing on top of it. So if it's everything is running fine, then you'll see this kind of thing. So that means I can start building my application on MVC now. So
Okay.
if I stop it, it's gonna close that Chrome tab, and I will be back to my this section.
Yeah.
So now so this is the first part. Now let's quickly go to this request response lifecycle. So the thing how whole MVC works, if I go to this section, is every time, let's just run this once again. I'll show you the most important part, how MVC works, because see, this is UI, this is Chrome right now. I want to go from this Chrome to my somewhere in my application, right? Somewhere in application, in some function somewhere in my class. That's like the idea. So how do I
Yeah.
go from there to my application and come back to UI?
Mm.
So that's the
First, you need to
request.
for the controller,
Yeah,
then
yeah, 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 yeah. We,
it
we will be, we'll be going through that. So the
correct.
thing is, we have, this is called a request response life cycle of MVC. Whenever
Mm.
I run this application, this will, it's gonna
Mm.
initiate a request. So
Request.
I'll show you
Yeah.
that, what
Mm.
that request looks like. So let's click on about, and let's go.
Mm.
So this is basically the Chrome section. We'll be looking into through this like in very huge amount in a single page application. But as of now, just see from a perspective of request response lifecycle. So when I click on about, it sends a request. These are all request and response kind of thing, and this is the request
Mm.
of about. So if you see,
Mm.
these are the things that request of about sent. That's I want to have some kind of encoding. This is the host, the user agent. So this is the request headers that it sends, and this is the
Mm.
response that is given by Microsoft, that function of about. So if you go to the
Okay.
response, you'll see it's giving back me an HTML,
Mm.
a pre-filled
Mm.
HTML with all the things that is shown that will be rendered by browser then. So
Mm.
going from this request, I get back a
Mm.
full HTML as a response. So you
Mm.
can see this HTML is a view,
Mm.
model view
Yeah.
control, that MVC. This is the view part
Mm.
that is written back from the controller. So let's go
Mm.
with that whole life cycle once.
Mm.
So MVC lifecycle is like this. We start with a browser that initiate
Mm.
a request that you just saw. This is the
Mm.
request that the browser initiate when I put like do something on the browser. So
Mm.
that request then goes to routing. That's like the first thing. Because in order to actually go to that right function, there has to be some kind of way to figure out that
Mm.
where what you're trying to access. So that's
Mm.
the routing part. Routing gives that thing to MVC handler, which
Mm.
decides which controller it should go to.
Mm.
And this controller will have all the functions. All the functions
Mm.
that you think about will always be on the controller side. Models
Mm.
will never have functions. I'll explain you how model works. I'll show you a
Ah.
complete example. But the way whole routing things works, a request is will be given to routing. Routing decides which controller is going to be passed and which action.
Mm.
Then controller
Mm.
will have different actions, and then we will execute that action and will generate a view, and that
Mm.
view will be given to view engine, which will convert that view, which is on the Razor pages side. I'll show you that. That will convert that to HTML and gives back the response.
Mm.
So you saw the request, you saw the response,
Mm.
you saw the
Yeah.
response with this
Mm.
HTML. This
Mm.
was a response, but
Mm.
you will see that this is very differently written in a view. You
Mm.
won't see a direct HTML here in the view. You'll see a different way of writing this HTML in view. So you see,
Mm.
because I'm writing HTML somewhere in MVC, that's why it's not a single page application. One, and second, I'm not relying a lot on JavaScript HTML now. I'm more on a
Mm.
C sharp side yet. So that's
Mm.
how the MVC work. It doesn't really rely on a lot on a UI side. It's
Mm.
still on a very server side kind of thing, because
Mm.
everything is given back from server. Nothing is being done on the UI side. It
Mm.
just gives me that and just renders it, and that's it.
Mm.
UI is not like browser not doing anything with this data.
Mm. Yeah.
And browser will be doing a lot on a single page application.
Mm.
So that's like a big difference between them.
Yeah.
Now let's see how this one request works. So let's just go with the about. So first we saw that we have a request goes to routing. So let's quickly go through this whole MVC thing. So we have properties, like the way I have properties in the class library, because
Mm.
it's going to create some kind of DLL for this. So that's a DLL configuration. It doesn't really matter much, but again, giving for a versioning thing, you can use that. Nothing more.
Mm.
Then the references, you can see there's a lot of references now. System web,
Okay.
web, 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 web.
Okay.
So because we are
Mm.
using a routing, so that's important. We will be using MVC components, that's important. So like every other component is important, we'll be using the U view, that's
Mm.
important. So all the things that are actually needed to work the MVC, it's already provided to you. So that's a good part of using a template. If you don't use a template, then you have to manually add them in an
Mm.
empty project. So it'll be difficult for you to up that application in one go.
Mm.
So that's references. Now app data will be having some kind of data files. It's not dynamic. It's not related to model view content. It's like a database file or a DB file, which all the data in. It could be also be a text file. So all those kind of things go through app data. And one
Mm.
thing about MVC is I'm going to just write it down. We have already done that. There's a thing called convention over configuration. This is a very strong, a whole ideology of MVC that it tries to focus on convention, then configuration. Basically means that even if you do everything the way I want you to do, like put controllers inside controllers, put models inside models, put views inside views, then pay for convention. Otherwise, configuration basically means that inside app web config or app config, I put, I start connecting things. But rather than putting so many configurations, what I want to do is just follow the way I do it. That's convention.
Okay. Yeah.
For convention, everything will work fine. So rather than giving you much control, I just say that just follow the way I would do it. If you do that, then that's like really, it's gonna work fine. That's where the MVC, overbeats the whole web form thing. Because in web forms, we have to do a lot of configuration. But in MVC, we just do convention. We just follow convention and everything is fine. So
Okay.
because configurations are less, so it helps from the developer side to write less configuration. And from the implementation side, they won't configure much. They just know where to put what. It's gonna work fine. That's like a very important thing, conventional configuration. So that's why the way I'm telling you, I will always write in that way. There's no other way to write this thing also. If I want to write in a very different way, I have to update the whole framework of MVC. So we generally will follow convention. So the convention is like that we will put app data inside app data. In app start, it will have those files that will be hit at the starting of application. Not after application is up and running. It will never be hit on these sites again. Then the content will be the CSS part, the UI part, the script, the way you define those components, the CSS part, which is styling parts. Content will only have that. Then controllers will have all your controllers, which will be looking back. So it's gonna come like these controllers are at this part of the life cycle, the controls. And then we will have fonts, which is again just for the UI side. The models will be all the classes that I want to use. I'll be creating a model. Script will be all the JavaScript. You see, automatically they pre-filled us with some jQuery and Bootstrap, but we'll be looking more this on the single page application. So right now I don't really care about scripts. And last is the views. And then we have this thing called global ASX and web config and package config. So package config is just to provide me all the different packages that I want to put inside references. It just provides me that kind of, and I'll be adding this if I'm getting like a package from outside or something else. Right now I have enough. I have everything that I want for running an MVC, so I won't be changing this. Web config is a way to create that configuration. Remember I told you that in web forms we used to configure a lot. So we used to configure in web forms using this web config only.
Usually the connection string will be in web.config.
Yeah, exactly. So in console application we have app config. In in this we have web config. And so connection string will put here only. So that's why we will have some kind of configuration. But again, this is more on a business level. Like we will have connection strings, we'll have some other configurations. But from MVC side, it has like a very bare bone basic web config. And everything this really doesn't need to change anything here. It's not that important. Everything is pre-filled for you so that you can run it easily. That's like the web config part. We will be adding connection string here. Yes, definitely. That's a good catch. So first, when the whole application starts, where the whole thing goes. So let's just stop that. Whenever I'm run this application, I will be going first of all to global ASX application start. That's the first thing that I'm going to hit, and this will be running only one time, like once the application is up. After applications up, no matter how many reloads I do, I won't be coming back here. So anything I want to do at application start, the starting application, I'll put the code here. And you see all those filter config, bundle config, they are all in the app start. So this thing every time, and you see this is class dot function. So you can imagine if I go to F12, I'll find this function static. Because this is class dot function name. You can see that how static works. And because I really don't care about creating an object here, so this helps in writing a very nice code. So in this filter config, we'll look at this areas and filter later on. We will look at bundles in SPA, but this is very
Mm.
important for us right now, which is routing.
Mm. Mm.
So route config decide how the route is, created. So
Mm.
if you remember the life cycle, we are at this part. Somebody has to define some kind of routing, right? And this route
Mm.
config, if I go to this route config, is just this route config. You'll see a first route. You see static, so it's automatically pre-filled with this collection.
Yeah.
You look at when you start looking at MVC, you'll realize that lots of things will be handled for you by the
Mm.
framework.
Mm. Mm.
You have to imagine that it's gonna come back with route collection. It will be provided to you at the time of application start.
Mm.
This is not something that you will be passing. You see,
Mm.
when I just passed from global ASX, I passed out tables or routes. I
Mm.
don't really know that where this will be pre-filled from.
Mm.
I, ju- I just I just trust the framework that it's gonna do that for me.
Yeah.
So you'll see a lot of things here happening that will just very enclose from you,
Mm.
because that's what the framework is all about, right? If you have to write everything from scratch, then what's the point of using a framework?
Mm. Mm.
So you'll know that in route config you'll have a route collection where you can add your own routes,
Mm.
and it's gonna be there for you. You know that
Mm.
that's not an issue. Now in the ignore route, I'm just creating a first route which every time somebody try to access a resource of this extension or something, I'll just
Mm.
ignore that route. So that will never be go to any kind of controller, and it's gonna throw back a 404 or something that this is not allowed.
Ah.
That those are ignore routes, and you
Mm.
can understand routing from looking at the the Chrome part. This is where what I create all the routes. I'll as an I when I want to access application action, I'll show you that right now. So this is where the routing thing enters. So in the map route, I'll create a controller action ID. This is the default
Mm.
route for me. So that
Mm.
means application slash controller name slash action name slash ID.
Mm.
If I do
Yeah.
this kind of route, it's gonna hit the controller
Mm.
action or go provide with it with the ID. If I
Yeah.
if I don't pass any of that, that means it's gonna go default to a home controller
Mm.
at an index section with a
Index.
blank ID.
Mm.
So that's the first basic route that's given to you. You can add on your own route, but this is like very generic. If I
Mm.
follow convention properly, then this will always work.
Mm.
That's the power of convention. I will have less
Mm.
configurations then. So if I
Mm.
follow this, it'll always work. So that's like the first routing that we're talking about.
Mm.
So let's start this application and see how routing, plays. Then I'll go with the controllers now.
Yeah.
So if I go to global SX, I put a breakpoint here. You can see that when I run this application, it will first come here before rendering anything on the UI. It's gonna hit my global SX. You see, it's here now.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
even doing anything with the application,
Mm.
any process has to go through the application start, because it has
Mm.
to set those routes. So it will go one by one and start, set. It'll go this function add filters. It go to route and start adding those routes. Ignore
Mm.
route, mapping route.
Mm.
It's gonna come back then. So that's the start. And if I reload it now, let's remove the pointer. The application's up. It's gonna render something. If I reload it, you'll see it will never hit it again.
Mm.
Put a breakpoint now.
Mm.
And you'll see how many times, no matter how many times I reload it, see,
Got it. Yeah.
because
Mm.
that's application's up now. Everything is no. The application knows
Mm.
everything now. It doesn't
Mm.
need to revisit that part.
Yeah.
It's only once thing and it will never happen again.
Mm.
Now what's going to happen is let's go with the routing. So see how route is going to hit my controller. I don't know that.
Mm.
There's no way I can put breakpoint anywhere by which, because I can only see my route. I know where the controllers are. I don't know how this thing, connects my controller. That's on the framework side.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
what I know is if I write, so my home is my controller, index is my action. If I write
Mm.
this, it's gonna hit my home index controller with the index action.
Mm.
Let's see that. Home controller. That's the
Mm.
convention. You write home,
Yeah.
then controller.
Mm.
Then you inside a home controller, you see an index action, right?
Mm.
So if I do that, I know my route would somehow work. I don't know how. It's on the
Mm.
framework, but I know when I do this, it's gonna hit my controller.
Mm.
So that's convention. You see how it's following that routing thing.
Yeah.
If I don't follow the convention, then eventually my whole routing breaks apart.
Mm.
Because I've read my routing, I know how convention works, so it's gonna hit my function now. It's gonna definitely
Mm.
hit my function. So that's like
Mm.
the first thing I was talking about. This is this part. Now I'm at the execution action execution. Now when I return my view, this part executes. So this return view again, this is just a return of a view. Which view is he talking about? Right? It doesn't give any name. But as you can see in a home controller, there's an index action. So if I follow convention again, inside a view, there will be a home folder. Inside home, there will be an index.cs HTML.
Yeah.
So it will return this. That's index HTML. And you see, it's not HTML, it's CS HTML. So you'll see something right now. You can see it's just HTML. There's no razor part, but there's something called this at the rate. So it's not a vanilla HTML. There's some kind of flavor happening here. So that's called razor pages. It's called razor
Okay.
syntax. That's what I was saying, that it's not, MVC is not a real single page application in the sense that it is not having a vanilla HTML. I'm going to change this HTML to use my C# part using these razor syntax at the rate, at the rate, at the rate. So this whole part is returned back because I'm not inside my controller doesn't really know which view to pass, but because I'm following convention, so it knows that you're going to go to a home folder. There will be an index HTML. I'm going to pass that. So this is convention. So whenever I'm creating a new controller, I will always have a folder. I will create a new folder here, and whichever function I want to give a view, I'll create a function view here.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
so you can imagine for this about, there will be about. You see about in the view, and for contact there will be a contact. So this is convention. That's how you connect things. Okay, that's a there, then that means that also be there somewhere. And that's the whole part of view. And models, I'm going to add models when I connect SQL Server, but that's how the whole cycle works. So it's going to give you a result of that CS HTML. And because it's a CS HTML, not a proper HTML, it has to be converted before giving to UI. If I give to browser a CS HTML, it won't know how to, what does that at the rate. It will render it in a very bad way. So I have to remove them. So that's where the view engine comes. It takes your CS HTML, converts it into an HTML and gives back to UI.
Yeah.
So that's the view engine part. And as you can imagine, this MVC handler is the one I'm talking about, that the route will go to controller. And this MVC handler is something which is hidden from me. I'll never change that until unless I want to create a very I want to create something very different. So this is hidden from me. Again, this is hidden from my view engine. Because this is on the framework side. I just know that if I return my view, it's gonna give back the right HTML. If I don't worry about these guys and these guys, and that's a good thing. I can just code and I can leave it everything to framework.
Yeah.
So if I just do this, it's gonna give back the view, and finally I'll get the HTML out. Now, even if my application is running, I can change CSS/HTML and I can see result instantly. I don't have to stop this view, this Visual Studio. So in index.html, I don't want any of this, what was written, right? So what I'll do is I'll just remove everything. And because I want to work on my own phone book UI, I'll just create div class. It doesn't matter if you give class, but I'm just adding it so that it's like you can understand what div is. That's a main div. And I'll add h1 phone book UI. If I save it, you'll see result instantly.
Home page.
That home page is my index.html, right? You can see phone book UI. Now you can see you'll see something very different here, that my HTML doesn't really start with HTML, right? I don't have a HTML here, like a starting tag. I'm just putting a div, and it's still creating something. Like if you look carefully, it's still creating this bar and this footer. Where is these guys coming from, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't have that here. How can it create a bar? I removed everything. So that's where the concept of a layout comes into the view. So we are going deeper on the view side now. We look at this razor pages. So we are going on a view side now. So if I just show you this basic configuration, so how view works is, this is my index HTML. right? It will be wrapped around a particular layout, which is layout.cshtml. That's like a layout. So if you go back to my UI, you'll see there's a shared folder. Now, if there's a shared folder, you can imagine I can never create a shared controller, or otherwise I'll break those
Yeah.
conventions, right? There's no point creating a shared controller kind of thing. Next is shared controller. You'll see there's a layout CSS HTML. If you
Yeah.
open this, you'll eventually see that, oh, it now has a HTML head body. So that's like a start. That's like a starting of whole HTML. Every time I start open HTML, I will have this head and body. And now you'll start seeing something called @@. This is what I'm talking about, Razor syntax. Obviously, this guy, viewback HTML title, will never be passed as like viewback title on the UI. You can see if I go back to UI and if I look at my HTML as a response, let's get this back. It's called homepage now. But in my Razor syntax, if you remember, it was @viewback title. So something must have changed it, right?
Oh.
Somewhere someone must have changed this viewback title to my homepage. So this is the view engine work. When I return a view, it looks at those @ and converts it into right HTML format. So that's where view engine enters. So now how is viewback title filled with like homepage? So if you look carefully at my index.html, I'm setting a viewback title on top. If I change it to like phone book, this index.html is contained inside that layout, as I told you in this section. And this layout has this index.html using this convention. So if you look at this layout.html, you'll see there's something called render body. This is a very generic function. Any guy who is using layout.html as its layout will everything will be pasted here inside render body. So my whole div is pasted inside render body. If I show you that, just I'll go back to my UI, run this again. You'll see now it's changed to phone book because I'm pre-filling it from the index.html, right? And my container body, that's the part I'm adding my own div main. You see, this was a div. This was a div, right? That's automatically pre-filled here. That's called the layout. Layout basically, helps you to provide a right footer, right header, and everything. Now, right now, I don't want this, this home action link. It doesn't really matter to me. So I'll just comment this div out. Control KC works here. And just save it because I don't want those links. I don't have those links. If I run this, those links will be gone. My application name is not application name. So it's called phone book. So I'm going to change this. And you can see your first HTML helper. There's something called HTML helpers. So it's called HTML.action link. So name, which function to hit, which controller to go, no area, no class. You can leave that as of now. But you can understand that if I click this phone book, then it's going to hit the home controller index function. Are you getting it?
Yeah.
This action link basically helps you to provide that kind of button. You can go to home controller with index function. So if I every time when I click here, let's change that phone book now. When I click here, it reloads my page because it goes to home controller index, which gives me back that view, and the whole page is rendered. So that's the first HTML action link. You'll see a lot of HTML helpers now because we are working on Razor pages. But that's like a hint to you that something like this helps me to write, C# kind of thing on HTML. So now let's focus on our index HTML. So we really don't want this header now because we have our own thing. So let's just do that. And we don't want this footer, right? So you know where this footer is coming from. We'll come layout. So just go down and you'll see there's a footer thing. There's a footer. I'll just comment this. I also don't want any HR line. I'll just comment this. And my page is blank now. I can render my stuff here. And how this is connected, like how this whole engine knows which is the layout view. So you can see there's something called view start CSHTML. If you go in this, you'll see it's it defines that layout. What's the layout? So maybe your layout is not usually starting this name, or you're having different kind of layout. Then you can change this and use it as a layout. But always remember, in your layout, if it's called a layout, then it will start with this kind of HTML thing. If your layout don't have start with HTML, it'll break on UI. Because when I render a normal CSS HTML, it won't have that HTML start and end tag because it's the center part. So maybe now if you look back at this image, it's more clearer now. This render body is having this index HTML, but the whole part is covered in layout CSS HTML. Right? You get how this thing works. So this index HTML could be any CSS HTML because render body is very generic. So I can use any other CSS HTML, it can still work on that layout. So that's how the layouting thing works in Razor Pages. And so you can imagine that if I'm using about, this part is replaced on the UI. Again on the layout HTML part. Contact. I'm not having any HTML here, right? So somebody's putting HTML for me. That is layout. So that's the layout
Okay,
part.
yeah.
Now so we saw this Razor Pages. Now let's work on model, because model is the way by which I connect the controller and the views with some data. I want to render my user list, right? I want to render this table, the list of users. Just like my prime focus right now, that I want to show all the users on my UI. This is on the SQL Server, right? And my view has to be provided with that data so that it can render it.
Yeah.
So let's do that. First, before doing that, I will have to create a model. So let's create a model which can help me. I have to stop this because now I'm not working on view anymore. I have to work on C# side, and I'll add a new model. And let's call it,
So you took the existing class, huh?
I'll create a new class.
New
I can
class.
even existing class, but I'm just creating a new class because I'm a new model. So I'll say that user data. The user data, because I know it be, so I'm sending public int user ID, and I'm doing this getter and setters. This is a way to set and get a particular, user ID.
Yeah.
Even set it, I can get it. So that's like a shortcut. And I'm going to set public string username. That's the basic user data. Now again, I will have a phone book. You see, all these classes right now I'm creating is actually like a structure of my DB, right? So that's where the whole entity framework comes into picture. That all these classes can be pre-filled with data automatically when the application is started. I'll show you later on. So let's create record ID and public int user ID. So that's the record of phone book, right? And
Yes.
public int contact ID. So that's user data of user phone book. And because I want to render everything in one go on the UI, I will add another class that will have this collection. So I'll call this user model. And you can name it anything, but I'm just, writing it now.
Yeah.
So this user model will have like all the users, right? So that means list of user data, because all the users are there. That's called users. And it will have phone book, list of all the phone books of each users, right?
Yeah.
So that means I will have some kind of phone book data kind of thing. So I can here add user phone book data. I'll get a new class. And this phone book data is in this way that I have a user. That's a user. And it will have multiple users inside it. These are contacts. You know what I'm doing right now? That Alice will have Bob, Alice will have Michael, Alice will have a single user will have multiple contacts inside it.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the user book data. And then and every user will have multiple. So for all the users, I have to give all the phone book data. So that means list of user phone book data. That's called phone book. Right? So that's how I design. I have my own database in my mind. I've created. That's why we go from backend to front end. I first create
Yeah.
database, then I know what classes it can gonna use. Then I create classes, and that's where the manipulation is going to happen in between. And because I want to initialize this class with blank list, so I'll use I'll take help of constructor. I'll say user model whenever somebody is calling it, because I don't want any kind of parameter now. I want to initialize this constructor directly, but I'm taking control. So I'll say users new list. So I initialize with a blank list. Otherwise, if I start adding it without initializing it, it will send me an error that your link is not initialized, your list is not initialized. So how can you add new data? So what I'm doing here?
News. Yeah.
So basically, whenever I'm going to create this user model, this thing will be pre-filled for me. And you can see the problem happening here, right? Context will want pre-filled for me if I don't use my constructor. So let's not use constructor here, but just use constructor here so that you know the idea of constructor. Now my models are ready. So what I'll do is before connecting to SQL Server, I'll just pre-fill it with my own dummy data. So in my home controller, I'm not having any kind of about or contact anymore. So I'll just remove that for this guys. And in the index, I'll create like a dummy data to show on you so that you know how the thing works. From dummy data, I have to add like random users. So I'll create list of user data users, or you can say dummy users list of
New.
data. And I can do this and then I can do add, right? Or I can follow a shortcut. Rather than do, I can do this also. Here I can set new user data. And again, I'm following that, shortcut that user ID is 1 and username is Alice. User data. As you can see, this is like a new kind of syntax, but that's the way you can put kind of shortcut kind of thing rather than putting initialize. Basically, I'm pre-filling data at the time of initialization. That's also possible.
Yeah.
And user data, user
Data.
ID, and I can put 3, and I say Michael. So those are my users. And then let's create some phone book record. User phone book. Or better, just create that phone book,
Yeah.
phone book. We'll use that when we are in SQL Server. So that's user phone book data. What was the class? It was user phone book data, right? Yeah. User phone book data will be again contacts. Will be, or you can say phone book. You can say dummy phone book. New list of user phone book data. And it will have new user phone book data. And in the inside that it needs a user data, right? So I'm going to create just a Alice record. So in the user, I'll put dummy users 0 because I want this Alice row, this thing. And in my other part, I will have to have all the contacts. So new list of, so it's the user phone book data. We have list of user data, right? So that means I can add just new user data, and I can add user dummy users 1 like Bob as its user, dummy users 2, and yeah, closed, not closed. So it is not taking anything. We can do the other way also if it's not working like that. Oh, that's why I'm not taking it because I was initializing it but not equating it to anything. This thing has to be equated with something, right? So that's contacts. It's closed and it's closed. User phone book. So see, I'm adding a user and contact. I'm getting a new list because it takes a new list of contacts. And in the list, I'm adding these Bob and Michael. And I have to click. And every time you are doing a object initialization kind of thing, you need to close that tab. You need to put like, this
Yeah.
thing, otherwise it's going to create an error. So Alice, Bob, Michael are three users, and Alice will have Bob and Michael as its contacts. This is what the dummy phone book looks like. I'll show you when you see the UI, you'll realize how. And in the user model, I'll create a new model. There's something I'm going to use on the web on the view side, and in the model, I have to provide users. So there'll be dummy users, and I have to provide phone book. There'll be dummy phone book. I have to close this. So my model has all these records and all these records. So I can render on UI. When you see on UI, you'll be like you'll understand this much better. And the view. Now you see the view takes object model also. So I can pass this whole data inside my view, and then I can play around with that data inside the view. There's a view name. There's a way to provide view name also and view with the model. So I'll just provide this model of user inside my view. Now my view doesn't really know that it is rendered with the model. So I'm going to use something called strongly typed view concept. Basically, that means that my view will be a strongly typed view. It's going to be created on this user model. So in my view, it's a way of defining view that you will be getting something like this. So first I do a using, and I'll say models, if it's helping me to come. No, phone book UI app dot models. It's similar as saying the using on your C# side. It's like that only, because this class needs to know where the models are. And then when I define my model, I say that you are based on the user model class. That's a way of creating a strongly typed view. So this index HTML becomes of the type user model.
Okay.
Now, so if I'm sending some kind of model from controller, it has to be strongly typed. Otherwise, this model when comes here, it's going to break that this view is not accepting me as a model. So controller now is saying that my view is strongly typed. It will be having that user model. Now I can render it. Now I can use that whole data here. So for rendering it, I'll say that div class users list, and inside user list, you can see a power of razor syntax happening here. I can put C# statements in between an HTML. I can write C# code inside an HTML, which is not possible if it's not having an MVC framework. So I'll write for each. That's user model list of user data. So that means user data. It's working here because I've already done the using. So all my models inside this class is available here. User data, user in. There's something called model, capital M. You see, I have used a small m here. I'm now using capital M. Now this guy knows which model you're talking about. You see, automatically I'm getting users and phone book. Because I've set this class to have this user model. User model has users and phone book. You can see it has users and phone books.
Yeah.
So it's giving me the suggestion because it knows that I'm a strongly typed view now. So model dot all the users. And whenever I want to write HTML, I can write instantly. Like this is inside at the rate, but I can write HTML here also. So what I'll do is I'll just, inside this div, I'll put this inside a UL. I'll say users list. No, class. It just do this one. There's no point creating a div. You can create a UL, and every UL will have li. So you see unordered list and ordered list, the concept of list inside HTML. So that's a way of defining a UL and li, like dot dot. You'll see how it renders. So inside an li, you see HTML. As soon as I add the rate, I can again start writing HTML. But now if I say user dot, so you see there's a problem here. I'm again back to HTML side. As soon as I want to say that now I want to use C#, I have to write at the rate. That I want to use C#. If I don't write at the rate, it becomes a string statement again. I want to get that username, right? So I write at the rate. Then only I can access that dot. You see, user ID starts coming. I'll say in this way that user ID. It's a very neat way of adding the data in an HTML username. At the rate again, user dot username. And that's my list. And I can say here that P users list. That's it. So if everything runs fine, then I should be able to see user list on, on UI. So you see how views are having like a very C# pushed inside it. So that's how the model view controller MVC framework works. That you have a controller, you have a view, and you have models, and models are way to push data inside view. So if everything works fine, then I should be able to see my all user ID and username here on UI. It's running. And then similarly, I'm going to add contacts here. Still running. Sometimes it can be like slow on your PC also. So it's gonna it's gonna run this and put this whole on the IIS framework. So you see, that's a UL-LI framework. And if you look at the HTML, it won't have any at the rate kind of thing. You see, it's user list UL.
Yeah.
That was my UL class user list, right? And now LI, and this for loop helps me to write multiple LI. It gives me a power to write multiple HTML components. So that's li, li, li 3 times because the data has list of those users. I'm running a for each now. And this thing is pre-filled now. So ID is 1 and Alice automatically comes. So you see how models play around with controllers. Now you can imagine I can fill this dummy data with the real data from SQL Server, right? You can imagine. That's possible. So we'll be doing that. So that's user ID here. Similarly, I can render that phone book list. So that's why I want to like push it inside div. Div helps me to create that thing, a breakage between everything. Otherwise, everything will be rendered on top. So let's remove div. Now let's create div class phone book. Right? And you can imagine I'll be doing the same thing.
The class name you're simply randomly giving, correct?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm just helping so that the person who's reading it can know that, oh, this is talking about that div phone book. And inside a phone book, I'll add, this can be anything. I'm just putting in a way that it can be styled later on. Again, it will be a UL. But this time you see there could be like multiple users having a multiple phone book. So this UL should be inside a for loop now. So for each, I'll be using model dot. For each, I'll be using user phone book data. So that's phone book in model dot phone book. I'll be creating multiple UL rather than a single UL because every user will have multiple that data.
Yeah.
And see, as soon as I want to use that phone book, I have to put at the rate. Otherwise, it's become really weird. So now I want to say that user is phone book dot user dot username. I can also say like user ID is phone book dot user your dot user ID comma username, and then I will put li because now there'll be a for loop inside a for loop. Because you can understand from this point that this user phone book data has user data and then list of all the contacts. So I'm going through this list of user phone book, so that's for loop. Then I have to go through again for loop to get all the contacts. So that means and this is the power. I can easily put a for each whenever I want. I'll say user data So that I'll say contacts in model dot in that phone book dot contacts. Then I can write li. Li will be, use contact name. I can write them just contact name and contacts dot username. If this like everything works fine, then you'll be able to see phone book now. And the power of this is not HTML anymore. This is like a advanced version of HTML. That's called C. That's why it's syntax called CSHTML. It eventually becomes a user page because something is gonna be rendering this on my behalf. So you see, for user ID Alice, I have Bob and Michael. If I have added like a Bob record, then I would also have. So like I can try that out. You'll see that inside home controller, I've just added a record for one guy. So let's add one more. New user phone book data. This time I'm going to take a user, dummy users for Bob. So there'll be one. And I'll create contacts. This time I'll add Alice inside it. I'll add Alice, and that means 0, and Michael. That means 2. The syntax look weird, but you understand why what I'm trying to do is my data, my Alice has Bob and Michael. Now Bob has Alice and Michael. That's Bob having Alice and Michael inside it. I run this. I don't have to change anything regarding my view now, because my view is already running a for loop. It will have a new record. It will eventually edit. So now Bob will have Alice and Michael. Alice was Bob and this was records. So my user list and phone book are available to me. But the problem right now is this is not rendered from SQL Server, right? So we have done this rendering with metadata, but we have to connect SQL Server. And you can imagine, like, you can understand why I created a C# library now. Because this is a whole new project. I don't want to add any kind of business logic inside my UI. I want to have some other DLL out there that can be plugged inside my UI. So now I can just comment this out. I don't want to use dummy data, but I want to connect it with SQL Server. So in order to do that, first I have to connect my DLL here, right? So that's where the references things and the whole thing comes into picture. Now I can do right click because I have to take the DLL inside my reference. So I can add reference. It gives me multiple ways to. I can search the assemblies also, which is not available, but I want to work on projects. So I'll select project. Automatically gives me those projects which are inside my solution. So I'll select data access layer and OK. Now the best part of this is whenever I rebuild it, it will always rebuild my data access layer also. So they see the first data access layer is rebuilt, then my UI is rebuilt. So no matter how many projects that I put, they will always be at a right state. Now obviously I have an error because I don't have any model to put into. So let's start with that. So now because I have put in my references, I can start using my SQL DAL manager. So if I write SQL DAL manager, it won't come. But because I have to use using, right click, and I have to use using. So now this class now I can create a new manager. But now problem is it doesn't allow me to create a blank constructor, obviously, because I haven't allowed it. So I need to somehow provide this DB connection key. And that's where the web config comes into picture now. So in web config, I can again create a connection string the way I'm connecting it. That's connection strings, similar structure, add name, DB con key, and connection string. I have to get it. So I'll get it from app config again. I'll get this my key. Now I've configured my DB connection string. You see why that was helpful to have a connection string previously. So now I can just put DB con key. That was my connection string. And I should be able to have that kind of connection. And that's the power of using a DAL layer. I don't now from a UI side, I really don't have to worry about opening connection, closing connection, and doing anything, right? I'll be just calling that class, and I'll be just calling that constructor, and everything will be given to me. So
Hmm.
now I'll just use data table, system data. So then mean all users, and I'll just call manager.execute stored procedure, and my procedure will be get all users. Once I get that, now I have to just create this list. That's it. So that means I have to go for each data row dr in I have to go through each rows, and I'll first create a list, because now I can't really create a dynamic kind of thing. So all users new, I'll create a blank list first, and all users users list, let's change it to users list, and I'll just add it one by one. So users list dot add new user data. This time user ID is dr user underscore ID. That's what's coming from UI from SQL, and dr user underscore name. Now the problem is this is a specific type. This is int, right? And this is string, and this is going to be object. I'll just convert it into the right format. And this will be toString. And I'll just do this. So I have my users list now, right? And that's it. Because I have created an object in the right way, I should be able to see my all the users. So if I just uncomment the phone book part, because I still want this dummy data, and I don't want dummy users, so I'll uncomment this phone book model. This time I have this users from server. So if I do that, this is this data table users list. This was my list. If I just run this, now this is breaking because obviously we don't have any dummy users in that way. And we don't really know that even if we have like a 0, 1, 2 record. So I'm assuming that I have at least 3 rows. Otherwise, see, imagine, because I'm using a fixed index. If I don't have any 3 rows, then there'll be no second index. It'll break. Like data, at least I think data has 3 rows. If there's no third row, then there's no users to write. So my dummy row will break. But this won't right now because I have 3 rows. So it should work as a dummy data. I'll be pre-filling this again using my server. So just run this. And if everything works fine, then I should be getting records from SQL Server now. And see, it was so fast. I was able to build it so fast because I have already created a DAL layer. Otherwise, I have to create connection, open connection, do the whole thing together. And it'll be very difficult. So see, now there's a problem here that it is getting more like the data is not that many indexes are not coming. So let's see what the data was. So that means all users are coming 0. There's no data coming from stored proc. Let's look at our stored proc once. Get all users. There's get users. Let execute that. User ID, username. Stop this. It's already stopped. Web config. Connection string is fine. Connection string using test database. In the test database. So we should be hitting it right. Let's try this again. Procedure name is correct. We're not getting any record. So now when these kind of things happen, then you need to debug the whole thing, like why the record is not coming. So look at all users and the table is empty.
Yeah.
right? Table is not coming from the stored proc, and we are using the same stored proc. The reason why this might not be coming is maybe in the DAL layer we are not doing it right. So in connection open, stored proc, we are returning DT. So see, now you can even debug your whole DAL thing. So you can just connect it here, like put it like this.
Yeah.
You can even debug your the C# part. You can see that whether things are going the way they should. This connection, you can see whether the connection is right. It's going to test get log. And are you able to open connection or not? So you're not able to open connection. So something wrong is going on, right? So that means in the DAL layer, maybe something wrong is going on. So you can put on exception then. Then you can understand what's going on. This is a way to debug. Something wrong goes on, you just put in the right point and just reach there. So I can imagine the connections can't be opened. So if I do that, I go
Just
to
right click.
exception. Yeah, so select command property has not been initialized before calling fill. You
Okay.
see, now you understand. Oh, I'm missing a select command. Yes, I am missing a select command. Definitely, I'm missing a select command here. So even though your code is on the DLL side, you can debug it. And if you can debug it, then you'll eventually find your problem. So that means I have to write, command,
So
connect the command.
yeah, it's better to come to the cache to see what is there.
Yeah, because now there's no such thing as console right now, right?
Even the connection problem also, it will show display it, correct?
Yeah. So there's no such thing as console right now in the UI. So you won't be able to see console like exception happening on the UI. So you need to like understand from this, or maybe like the real how Railroad works is we have a logging scheme. We log everything on a file. Then we go to that file and see whether what's going on.
Okay.
So right now I can put only debug pointers because you won't be see on console. There's no UI that will show you the exception now. So you can just put breakpoint and go through the code and see where it's breaking, and then you can put breakpoint and understand the exception from here. So now if I run this, it should work fine because now I have provided the stored proc command. And we should be able to get those keys. So now the data should be available with me. Now it's coming, right? So that means I should be able to render it on UI. So see, now this is coming from DB. This was my users.
The first, yeah.
So this is coming from DB now. And the second thing is also coming, like it just doing the dummy thing. It's not coming from DB yet, because if you look at the phone book record, like it's like this 1213. And on the UI, there will be like Bob Ellis and Michael Bob. Right? So one way to do this is like I can show you, and because I have to create some kind of stored proc to get those guys out now. So this query that I used at that time, then I can just create procedure get contacts. You can put like user ID int as oh, it's basically giving me the username. I can get like a dot user ID and a dot username, and I can use user ID. If I create this procedure, so that get contacts fired, and you see it's so easy to connect it now because my data table can be pre-filled with those users. So if I because I want to get that record, and if I run this get contact for particular user ID, so it's gonna give me those contacts. It's like for Alice, it gives me Bob and Michael. So if I run this for every user, I should be able to get the record, right?
Yeah.
So that means if I put data table contacts, and if I just say manager dot execute stored proc get contacts, this time I have to pass like the that parameter. So new SQL parameter, I have to add reference. And I have to put parameter name, that's user ID. And where am I getting that? I'm getting that from, UI, from here, from this for loop.
Mm.
Tr user ID. I have to close it. And this should be it. I am using, I have to use this like new list. So I have to create new list of SQL parameter. And I have to, you get what I'm saying? I have to put list there rather than that. So when I put list, I have to create new SQL parameter then I can pass this. Yeah, so it's like this new SQL parameter. Then you can close it. Then you close that. Or if sometimes this becomes very confusing. So what you can do is you can create SQL parameter on top. Param new list of SQL parameter like this. Then do param add new SQL parameter. And then add your user ID. And your user ID coming from top. So convert dot to int32 dr user ID. And then when parameter is ready, you can just pass that param. So it'll be more easier for you to figure out rather than
Mm.
putting everything in one go. Because sometimes it becomes very complicated and because of those parameters, and you can just do that. So that's param.
Mm.
You see, now it's able to work it out. So
Mm.
once it get the contacts, you can just do a for each. I can also have list of I can also have list of this phone book, list of user phone book data. So that's phone book, new list of user phone. I'm creating a blank here, and
Mm.
then I can just go through the for each, go row by row, data row, CDR. You can put it anything. So like
Mm.
contact in contacts dot rows. And if there's a for loop, there's some kind of thing existing, then phone book dot add, it needs new user phone book item. And user phone book, I will have like I'm not having a record ID now. I could also get that out from
Mm.
that. So I'm just putting a user ID. So it's not user phone book, it's user phone book data. So it's user phone book data. Phone book data needs it needs different thing. It needs users. The user is the guy that I just created. This user data, so I can put it. I'm just doing everything in one loop. So I can do it like this: user data, users, new user data, and I can add that. So that way I can use it down. You get what I'm doing?
Mm. Yeah.
Because I want to use it here.
Mm.
The user and the contacts is basically then is again is a list. Is it a list? Yeah, it's a list of user
Mm.
data. So
Mm.
better way to do this is to just create a list here. List of user data. So it's like a nested kind of thing. It's a little bit complicated to
Mm.
to think, to grab and head, but once you start writing it, you'll start getting it. So contacts, and I'm going to just add that contacts dot add new user data because I'm getting the same contact data row kind of thing. So it is exactly this, except I have to just change the dr. This is not dr anymore, it's contact. I'm going through a loop of contact, right?
Yeah. Mm.
And that's why I've added contacts. Now I can just put contacts here. So after a weird long running loop, we are finally able to get that in the right way. So if we have done everything right, so this dummy phone book is not needed. Just add phone book. So if everything goes right, then we should have. So what I've done is I've just, because the data has to, fetched in that way, that user
Mm.
inside the contacts. So I've just run user, for every user, that whichever user that I got, I just pass that user ID inside this contact procedure. I
Uh,
get all his contacts, and then I just add them inside the phone book data.
mm.
For this user, the list of all the contacts, because there could be multiple contacts, right? So that's a fault
Yeah.
again.
Mm.
So you see, for Alice, I'm getting Bob, Michael. For Bob and Michael, I'm getting no records.
Mm.
So it's running for each of these guys: Alice, Bob, Michael, Bob, no record, Michael, no
Mm.
record.
Mm.
It's running
Mm.
like that now. For every
Ah.
user, there is no contact, so there is no